Next topic is going to be about analytics. And actually, the references to the Real-Time Crime Center that were made during the PSAP conversation will continue during this panel. We had 3 panelists, but yet one more individual had a conflict that came up with regard to connectivity, and therefore we now have 2 panelists that are still going to give you some extraordinary information on the changing world of analytics and how the not only the paradigm has shifted and the expectation from the community, from the responders, from the analysts that are now being developed in their own separate, I'll say, community. Just like we're talking about the community of responders at the 911 level, need specialized attention, need training. We need to understand their needs, they need to understand ours, and most importantly, we all have to see the great potential that exists before us in order to then better make those communities safer and support those ends. We have 2 individuals. Casey Roussel is our chair for the Analytics Committee. You'll know that that's one of the 7 committees. And we have Lieutenant Colonel Joe Brennan. Hey, Joe. That is with us from New Jersey State Police, another Jersey rep that has some great messages and great lessons learned that he's going to share with us. And I'm going to kick it off with just a couple of questions. But much like the previous panels, it won't take long for this to just get into a great conversation between all of us. Because there's extreme potential here, frankly, not only to learn about how we support the Real-Time Crime Center notion and promulgation within the cities or agencies that are interested in it, and obviously foster or improve those that already do exist, but how we could use these lessons learned for the PSAP concept. So I'm hoping that the folks that were on the PSAP panel will stay with us and maybe be part of that conversation, because I think it'll be very effective for us. So, Casey, can you tell us, can you explain to the audience a little bit about the background on the committee itself, what the sort of challenges were as it related to the definition of analytics, right? Who are we talking about? Are we talking about at the state level? Are we talking about the Fusion Center level? Are we talking about the Real-Time Crime Center? And how you all went through this exercise and ultimately decided to focus on certain component parts, and how now a case study of sorts is being looked at from the Real-Time Crime Center perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Maria. It was quite a journey of how we got here. When we first started the committee, we've got some amazing individuals on it, and it didn't take long for us to realize that we were kind of like a hamster running in the wheel. We were doing a whole bunch of effort, but we really weren't getting anywhere. So we really had to stop and pause for a second to try to figure out the basics. What were analytics, especially from even the name of our committee was the Advanced Analytics. And the more we talked to agencies around the country, almost at every level, we found that the vast majority of agencies were doing basic reporting. Forget about analytics. They were just trying to get NIBRS reporting straight and try to understand basic things at the level, at their own level with it. So we really tried focusing more on the methodology. We had many discussions regarding, how do you build an analytical model that would work for a major municipal city, and one that would work for a small 10-man agency. So Maria was one that actually, helped out a ton of saying, hey, let's focus on the methodologies, focus on, hey, where do you start? And hey, obviously, every department is going to fall a little different levels of how much they're doing, depending on what they have access to. But it started with answering some very basic questions. And we kind of divided it into 3 groups on our side of one, what we call the collectors, the agencies, the courts, getting the mindset right of, hey, we're going to collect certain data that's really, really relevant to being able to do this, and have the technologies that allow you to collect it digitally, get away from filing cabinets. Then we had the custodians, the RMSs, the JMSs, the CMSs, making sure that part of that methodology was, hey, sharing is a very crucial part of what they have to be able to do. Get away from this mindset of proprietary data and proprietary processes, where everything dealing with the custodians is able to share that data. And then the third would be the regulatory, the feds, the states that set all the parameters of how this data needs to be shared, the CJIS rules, all of that sort of stuff, and making it into some type of understandable terminology where we can all speak the same language and share that data appropriately and in real time with it. So that led us into two main subcommittees. One is terminology. Joe, who's on the call with New Jersey State Police, that was one of the critical things they talked about, was making sure we're all speaking the same language when it comes to data. So as we go across jurisdictional lines, we all know what we're talking about when we share something. And then finally, case study. How can we prove to people when you go to these agencies, how can you actually show that something is working? A lot of times, I know in our experience, when we go talk to chiefs and sheriffs and start talking analytics, their eyes glaze over and they're like, look, we're just trying to figure out how to get gas in our patrol cars. I don't even know what you're talking about when you're saying analytics. Well, if you can go with a case study and say, listen, this is what this agency did, and this is the results of it as you're fighting all these violent crimes, you don't have enough people, here's how you can use analytics to solve some of those problems. Now they're more open and have a very clear roadmap of how you deploy something like this. So that's where we are now. We engaged New Jersey State Police in their ROC with Joe and his team, and it's been phenomenal. What New Jersey is doing is extraordinarily impressive. We went from not even being able to find an agency to partner with to having one of the best case scenarios that I could have ever wished for. So the final result that we're going to have put out later this year, hopefully at our symposium, I think is going to be really impressive that everyone's going to be proud of.
Wonderful. I thank you for the background. I will say that we now have Shelagh Dorn that's returned, and this was one of our missing links. So, hey, Shelagh, how you doing? You're on mute.
Great. How are you?
I am doing very well, honey. I appreciate your being able to join us and making the effort. I was going to go to Joe, but I'm going to leave Joe for the end. Don't take any offense, Joe. Shelagh, we're going to go to you. I don't know if you were able to hear the majority of Casey's discussion, but he sort of introduced the committee concepts and a little bit of the background so that the audience understood where we got to or where we came from. I'd like to ask you, Shelagh, talk to me about your organization. Talk to the audience a little bit about, a little bit of a self-introduction and how the community sees the value to the data and what maybe some of the challenges are, and then we'll go from the ops perspective.
Fantastic. Thank you, Casey, for setting the stage, and Maria for inviting me to participate today. I'll tell you a little about the International Association of Law Enforcement Intelligence Analysts. We have 4,000 members worldwide. 75% of them are in the United States. We're a nonprofit organization, and it's significant to data, information sharing, and greater intelligence goals. So our members are brought together to achieve the following 6 objectives. Advocacy. So we pull together our members and we advance public and official understanding of criminal intelligence analysis and its role as a profession. Our board members, in the role as president, I regularly represent IALEIA as a subject matter expert at international and national meetings. Our senior members also serve as advocates and advisors to newer members through a mentoring program and through our training courses. In terms of training, we devise concepts, standards, and curricula for training. We also offer basic analyst training for analysts worldwide, as well as a management class that we just put together in the past year, and a financial analysis course. Certification. Law enforcement officers have certifications, executives have certifications, well, IALEIA does too. We have qualification standards and indicators of competence for our profession. We administer a professional intelligence certification program that has been in place since 1991. We use the certification program to encourage continuing education, measure knowledge and skills, set a baseline for intelligence analysts across the United States and internationally, and also recognize excellence through experience in the profession. Networking. We have regular meetings, training. We have speakers that are arranged by numerous intelligence analysis chapters worldwide, as well as our training conference that's being held next year in New Orleans. Professionalism. We reinforce the concepts of professionalism, dedication to service, integrity, ethics amongst practitioners of criminal intelligence analysis. And finally, research. We encourage research about criminal intelligence analysis. We do our own. We participate with other practitioners who are doing research and academic community partners who are doing research. We also work to identify funding and procure funding for such research. I just finished writing an intelligence grant for $1.5 million for intelligence and information sharing amongst tribal sector. So to set the stage, you probably all know that 80% of our agencies are small agencies, so less than 20 officers. And when we talk about intelligence analysis, the large and major agencies that are focused on don't tend to have the funding and the training difficulties that we face in small and rural populations. So what are our challenges as intelligence analysts, and where do we see our analysts headed? My specialty is in policing and intelligence, but I know that other criminal justice sectors are experiencing similar challenges. The courts community, corrections, etc. We're all still wrestling with data. Even 20 years into this business in my career, out of a 30-year career in criminal justice, it's still data that presents the most problems for us. We are stuck dealing with proprietary systems, homegrown systems, expensive upgrades, the purchasing of smaller companies by bigger companies that then fail to provide services for our legacy systems that leave us in limbo. 80% of my time right now, because I'm a working criminal intelligence analyst, is spent dealing with data. I'm querying, I'm cleaning, I'm parsing, just to come up with basic statistics, not even an intelligence analysis. There's siloed, inaccessible data, there's duplication of efforts, etc. It means that only 15%, 20% of my time is spent doing actual analytic work. And that's not unusual across the board. Where else do we see our analysts headed? Out the door. Many are taking their expertise, 3 to 5 years of experience, and moving into the private sector. Why is that happening? Better salaries, better working conditions, a little more respect in some cases. There are numerous reasons. A lot of them have to do with the culture of the law enforcement community. It's bad for us at the state and local system, but good for them. What else? Online. The pandemic introduced a challenge to us because we were no longer meeting face-to-face, training face-to-face, working with officers face-to-face. But it also created some opportunities. The reality is that a lot of criminal justice intelligence work can be done remotely. In fact, most of it can be done remotely. I currently I'm living in South Carolina and working for an agency in New York State. I have to work specifically for additional opportunities to communicate with officers, but balancing that, the work and personal life balance has really worked out for me. And we need to take a look at intelligence analysis and see if there are opportunities to create hybrid positions where agencies are sharing intelligence professionals, or the regionalization of intelligence analysis is also a possibility, where agencies are coming together to share data and work together to put together intelligence analysis. Finally, research and funding for grants and work for intelligence analysis. There have been highlights and there have been low points throughout the last 20, 25 years in terms of research and funding that included, specifically had the goal or the aim of information sharing and intelligence. And we need to keep pushing that message. No matter if you call what we are doing intelligence-led policing or data-driven or evidence-based, intelligence is the way to go. Sharing of information is the way to go. And we need to make that process simple and effective so that intelligence analysts can do their jobs. There are a number of solutions. I'll just touch at a high point on those. Ensuring that intelligence analysts and civilians in law enforcement are treated as professionals. That means bonuses for certifications and higher levels of experience. Realizing that our old ways of reimbursement may not work for people who are seeking to retain analysts. Sometimes retaining an analyst for $10,000 or $15,000 more is better than starting the hiring process and retraining process over for another qualified civilian intelligence analyst. Personal development, encouraging analysts to join professional associations so they aren't alone and they aren't reinventing the wheel. We've worked with Department of Labor since 2010 to put together a buffet of job descriptions, and that's available on the Department of Labor site if you search for intelligence analyst. To be honest, the culture of law enforcement needs to shift fairly significantly as we reimagine policing, and I know that those words come with much stress for a number of people. But reimagining policing is part of realizing that officers need to be leading the charge to fight crime, and that civilian professionals within their agencies can oversee IT, records, intelligence, and analytics. Hiring civilians at a command level position or a deputy chief position, those are opportunities that we need to explore. Diversity in intelligence analysis. I had a difficult discussion with our board last month as I moved from the president role to an advisory board role. And I've consistently maintained over the years that we need to make sure that our committees and the people who are working on behalf of intelligence analysts represent our community. We share the same challenges as law enforcement officers, that this is not seen as a field sometimes outside of military personnel and law enforcement officers who want to cross-train. We need to open this up and make this publicly available and let people know more about intelligence analysis and data analysis as a profession to help fight crime. The other challenge that we're facing is AI and other emerging technologies. They are challenges, but they also reinforce our need for critical thinking professionals. There are great tools out there, GIS, different data analysis tools, but we need to remember that critical thinking is that important part of intelligence analysis. So in conclusion, being pushed from, I think it was said in a previous panel, old think to newer ideas, we have the ability to be agile, proactive, and respond quickly and effectively within our industry. And how we respond is going to be vital to our success in the future.
Thank you, Shelagh. I appreciate all of that. And it's interesting because the themes that you bring up, the data issue, of course, being centric to all of this, the culture change that you see is required in order to improve the efficiencies, the education for not only the skill sets, but then to sort of reinforce the reimagined policing, and then the governance that aligns to not only your current community, but then how you fit in the broader community of intelligence and analytics. And they're almost independent, right? Because there are two separate communities that then are working together. It almost mirrors identically to what is the conversation we just had on PSAP issues. I mean, it's right on the money. Now, again, we couldn't have planned it to be so precise, but it is something that shows that the consistency remains strong. Frankly, our community ability to be able to support the cause will remain strong. But in the end, We're all here to better the operations and be able to support the communities, which we'll touch on a little bit later. Joe, one of the lines that Shelagh used was to help fight crime. Though we had started with what was Casey's discussion on the different type of analytic communities there are, because it depends what you were focusing on. And then Shelagh chatted about the analytics from the intel perspective, and I won't say only from the homeland perspective, but from the broader intel community. Talk to us and provide us, if you would, your perspectives, your experience, your challenges that happened at the state level for hometown security, right? Help fighting crime. And I know that you've got some extraordinary lessons, challenges, and information to share with the group. So if you wouldn't mind, have at it.
Well, first, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Maria, for this opportunity. And hello, Shelagh, and hello, Casey. Sorry to leave you up there on the stage by yourself, Casey. I couldn't make it down there. I'm on the boardwalk in Atlantic City right now in the historic casino gaming building, which is the original headquarters of the real-life Nucky Thompson back in the 1920s, for you fans of the television show Boardwalk Empire. But that's where I am today. I was assigned to the Fusion Center, the State Fusion Center, known as the Regional Operations and Intelligence Center, for 16 years. So essentially from its formation back in 2007 to just a year ago, and it remains under my current command. But the colonel at the time during the formation of the Fusion Center, Colonel Rick Fuentes, who was on a panel yesterday during this IJIS presentation, had the real insight and foresight to make the Fusion Center an all crimes, all threats, all hazards Fusion Center. So we immediately made ourselves relevant to our constituency on a daily basis, building capabilities, building data sets that would ultimately help us to protect the homeland from the terror threat, but also engage in public safety threats too. The chief of the Jersey City Police Department at the time, Tommy Comey, was an immediately a quick partner. His city literally sits across the river from the site of the World Trade Center. Two of the plots, the World Trade Center bombings, were essentially hatched in Jersey City, and the actors were in Jersey City prior to the terrorist acts they committed in New York. But if you asked Chief Comey what was his top priorities, even back then, it would be people being shot in the streets and drug dealing in the streets, not terrorism. So by concentrating on what was important to our local chiefs, we were able to get buy-in, build a network, collect data sets, and build a strong capability in the anti-terror realm. But really, crime is where we are able to really have impact. So as a state trooper, and it's a unique position too, right? So I'm a state police executive. So my AOR is the entire state of New Jersey. New Jersey is comprised of 562 separate police departments, each with their own chiefs, their own paperwork, their own ways of even talking on the radio are different too. So that has been a struggle. But as Casey mentioned, we've picked certain lanes that are important, and the lanes, whether they were picked for us or we decided to start tracking that. At the end of the day, the governor and the AG set the priorities. And in New Jersey, it's people being shot, cars being stolen, and people overdosing from illegal narcotics. So we've built quite a significant capability around collecting information on those data sets to understand the problem, have a complete understanding of the problem, message the problem, and then build capabilities to impact the problem, and then measure results. So we're very, very specific in what we're trying to do and what we message out. We measure success by the number of people shot in the state of New Jersey. We measure success by the number of cars stolen in the state of New Jersey. We measure success by the number of people that have fatally overdosed. And I can tell you right now that there were 2 people shot last night in the state of New Jersey. That brings us to 428 people shot, 84 fatally. Last year we had 1,056 people shot. We have a branch-wide initiative now, actually, and it's going to be a statewide initiative. U1K, under 1,000. That's what we're shooting for. We're not trying to reduce crime or reduce violent crime. We're being very, very specific because we have the data now to measure that, understand it, and then start to identify who is driving it. We have 1,000, as of this morning, 1,554 guns were recovered, 1,203 by arrest. 108 of those are ghost guns. 1 in 10, because we NIBIN every single gun. We know that 1 in 10 guns is actually used in a shooting, so we can start to more narrowly focus our efforts on the people that surround those guns. If it's a ghost gun, 2 out of 10, so double, are used in shootings. Carjackings, we're at 100 statewide for the year, so that problem we've attacked and mitigated. Motor vehicle theft, 6,689 cars stolen as of this morning. We're down 9% compared to this time last year. So we're understanding that from a statewide perspective. There were 48 cars stolen last night. There's an average of 40 a day, so last night was a bad night. We're at 1,224 people that have overdosed from fatal narcotics. We're down 8% compared to this time last year. That's about 7.5 people dying a day in the state of New Jersey. Still too high. One's too many. And there were 6,632 naloxones as of this morning, too. So that is up. That number is up. So that's probably contributing to the reduced rate of people dying. But we can understand, track, and now build capabilities around these problems. Work with our partners. I can talk about how we do that as well. But we use those numbers to measure. If the numbers start going the wrong way, we got to look at what we're doing and how we're doing it and adjust tactics. But we're able to adjust every 24 hours. We're collecting and publishing. We publish this information on a law enforcement only portal that we've leveraged through the Homeland Security Information Network too, and it's available to all police across the state. We keep that portal open 24 hours a day as well to act as a virtual command post to mitigate the interoperability between 562 police departments. We're getting a tremendous amount of information coming into the ROC. The challenge was how do we get it out quick? And email and phone calls is not the way to do it. But this portal, what we're able to do is message it out in real time with the click of a button. It's web-based, secure and free. And what we did, and I guess this piggybacks on the previous conversation, we have our operational dispatch units, or our PSTs, across the state that are on this portal receiving this information, and they're able to amplify that message to the state police personnel that are on patrol at that moment. That we struggled for years to get information out to our own troopers. We also have local police departments that sign on regularly. Their radio rooms sign on to amplify this message too, and that includes the New York City Police Department JOC. They are on 24/7 because I like to kid my New York friends, Manhattan is an island off the coast of New Jersey. It's in very, very close proximity to us. We share multiple bridges, tunnels, and bad guys. So they're seeing an increase in motor vehicle theft perpetrated by New Jersey bad guys. So we're exchanging information in real time, trying to help each other mitigate that problem as well. The collection of data, you were right on with the collection of data. Up until 2021, the good news was we had millions and millions of pieces of data on the problems that we were collecting. But the bad news was we had millions and millions of pieces of data on the problems we were collecting. And we had no real way to see it and make sense of it. What does it mean is the big question, right, that we always want to ask. But we gained the technology to aggregate that information and see it, all of these data sets together, and it started to paint the picture for us. We learned immediately, we started to apply all of these data sets that we're collecting on gun crimes with fingerprint data. we were able to start receiving that in real time every 24 hours. And what we learned was that 300 people a day were being arrested in the state of New Jersey. And without fail, statistically, 10 of those people were involved in shootings. Now, prior to that, we'd have to rely on CCR, UCR data, which was 2.5 years old. That's like trying to make a decision based on a newspaper you're reading from 2.5 years ago. It doesn't make sense, right? So we got that ability in real time. And what we then started to be able to draw up a capability. Cops are coming into contact with violent recidivist offenders on a daily basis. We have bail reform in the state of New Jersey, but we have a provision in bail reform, our Bail Reform Act, that lets local prosecutors argue for pretrial detention based on a threat to public safety. So the people that we were having fits about, our analysts were seeing on a daily basis and becoming frustrated, they were recidivist gun offenders. Their guns were linked to multiple shootings through 9/11, and they were either shooters or recidivist victims, or both, a combination of the above. We were then able to find a way now to start to mitigate that without putting any extra cops on the street. We were just looking at the data. What are the cops doing and seeing it in real time? And then we proposed to the Attorney General that if we were able to arm these prosecutors with this information that we had and they didn't about their involvement in the criminal shooting environment, they could make a case for pretrial detention. And if we can, because of the data, what we saw was there was a few people using a few guns a lot, that by incarcerating a few of them, disrupting the criminal shooting environment, whether it's for 5 minutes, 5 hours, or 5 days, or 5 years, we could disrupt the criminal shooting environment and then reduce the number of people shot. When we proposed this in June of 2021, shootings were up 75% from 2021, from 2020, and 2020 was an up year compared to 2019 as well. So we had nothing to lose at this point. We were spiking, and the spike was had no end in sight from 2019 to June of 2021. The Attorney General thought it was a good idea, established a directive, and established a task force. So the task force is really a precision prosecution task force. It's lawyers, it's attorneys. It's attorneys from the Attorney General's office who act as liaisons to the county prosecutors. And we meet daily at 10:30. We discuss those 10 individuals that popped the night before. And we make sure that the prosecutors arm themselves with this information and make a good case to the judge, the local judge, that this person needs to be incarcerated for the good of public. So at the end of 2022, it turned out 511 people made the difference. 511. We referred 511 people for pre-trial detention. Those 511 people were responsible for 6,044 arrests. 1,471 of those were gun arrests. That's about 12.5 arrests per person, 3 of them gun arrests. So they're recidivist violent offenders. They're no strangers to the criminal justice system. 208 of them were suspects in shootings. 343 were victims in shootings, and an additional 129 were linked to further shootings, bringing it to at least 680 shootings, probably more. That made the difference, though. We were able to detain initially 77% of those. The average percentage of detention was about 40% on gun arrests in the state of New Jersey. So we about tripled that. 55 of them remain in custody to this day. What we found was that shooting victim, the numbers started to go down immediately. And we ended the year with a 25% reduction in shooting victims. So essentially 300 people less shot. So that's something you can really measure and talk about as a success. And we're continuing to refine that process. We're also able, because we have the data, to proactively mitigate the situation. So our fugitive unit would go to problem areas where shootings are spiking, right? The common police practice for a spiking area is to map it. Where is it happening? Do a temporal analysis. What time is it happening? And then put a lot of cops in that area. Now we can be super precise because we know exactly who is driving the shooting. So rather than flood an area with police and hit corners and stop and frisk people on the corners and in areas where you're more likely to find people with guns, we actually know who the people with the guns are. So we target them. We look for opportunities, particularly active warrants on them, and then we do a warrant sweep on individuals that have active warrants that are involved in the criminal shooting environment, and we bring them in. And then there's a whole investigative component, because you know who you're bringing in. You can then bring in detectives that are familiar with them to debrief them on the open cases that they have active. We can bring in additional charges. People with 3 prior gun arrests are likely to have a gun on them when the warrant squad comes to visit. So we get additional charges on them as well, and we knife in those guns as soon as they come in, and then if they are a hit, then the detectives have even more to talk with that individual about. But that is a proactive tactic that we're using, and we're having considerable success in reducing the number of people shot. But we're also reducing motor vehicle theft too, because what the data is telling us too is that not all drug dealers and car thieves are shooters, but all of our shooters are drug dealers and car thieves. So if we get to hyper focus on the shooters and get them off the street, they are prolific car thieves as well. And so we start to see a decline, a 9% decline from last year as well. So there's a lot of overlap here, but really data and technology are really informing our operations, and our operations are driven by priorities. I think I said a whole bunch of stuff there, Maria. I hope.
I was just going to say, Joe, you always say a hell of a lot of stuff, and I will tell you that as many times as I listen to what I refer to as our story, because it's a Jersey issue, I am always impressed on how you slice and dice it, and that is the world that we live in, and that has been the certainly these couple of days, but that is the community that we are talking about, making the data accessible in a way that those conversations can be had, those decisions can be made, and most importantly, those results can be realized. Those reductions, Joe, that you talked about, given the addressing of what were all the issues we've discussed in the previous conversations, whether it's governance, whether it's technology, whether it's programmatic and operational governance and partnerships, all those things that we said are necessary or need improvement in certain cases are what you had to have addressed successfully in Jersey in order to realize that. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not a hell of a lot of work being done in other areas and other jurisdictions, because there's advancements and because people are doing it manually and because people are doing it despite what there are hurdles on a daily basis. But that's the picture in some ways that I think tells a huge story on what is possible and what the potential is and what we should want to move towards. So, are there questions from the audience with regard to Casey, to Sheila, to Joe? Okay, we have one in the back of the room. Ms. Kathy? I want to throw it at you, so. Sorry.
I was just wondering how, I know there are all different types of fusion centers and, intelligence gathering across the country, but I did see Joe's demonstration for about 2 weeks ago, I guess, of what you've done with ROC, and I just wonder how difficult and what types of agencies would be involved in duplicating that model. And I know there were a lot of things that you were able, it really did feel like Minority Report when you were showing, and I was so impressed. So how difficult and what kind of potential funding is there still available for that kind of development? Is that not being funded these days, or what's the situation on that? So.
Yeah, so thank you very much for your question and your feedback too on the Salt Lake City presentation. So what we like to say at the ROC is that it's replicable, scalable, and actionable, because we know that because we started small. We have two enduring sayings at the ROC that we're flying the plane as we build it. We continue to fly it because we're constantly modifying it, and then we eat the elephant one bite at a time. The ROC is, besides the salaries paid to the troopers and the analysts and our our partners, our federal, state, and local partners at the Fusion Center, we're run on grants. So Burn, JAG grants is what really funds us. We started the analysis squad that I started on. I wasn't even a sergeant. I was a detective, and I had 2 analysts with me, and we just started. Our job was to start to track every shooting in the state of New Jersey, to start to build this capability. And while we were at it, every gun arrest too. So it really seemed daunting. I mean, the first question I asked my sergeant was, well, sure, just tell me who else is doing this, and we'll copy them. And the answer was nobody, really. So we had to kind of figure it out. And really, certainly in the beginning, it was based on relationships. We're from the state, and we're here to help. And it took some convincing in some corners, but we started where we had some influence too. So we had state police detectives out, detailed out to 3 jurisdictions, assisting on shooting investigation teams. So we started there, and then when we started to collect, we immediately turned the information that we received had to immediately be turned around into an intelligence product to show the customer that was sharing that information with us that we were going to use it, and we were going to share it. We weren't going to hoard this information. We were all about sharing. We don't have an investigative component to the ROC. I think that was super important too. We were all about aligning with the investigators, and we would align with a detective that had a problem, or a chief of police, or groups of chiefs of police that had a problem. We really had some really good luck. Just at that time, there was a sort of a movement in New Jersey too to start thinking about crime regionally, and the DEA partnered with the Newark Police Department in a project called VEST, Violent Enterprise Source Targeting, and it was looking at all of the police agencies that were operating in one venue. Newark is our largest city. There are about 15 separate police departments operating there. And at the end of the day, we're all chasing the same guys. Like, there's only, and we were doing it individually. But the idea was to get together regularly, weekly scheduled, share information on specific targets, and come up with strategies to conduct quick and effective investigations to disrupt the environment there. We immediately partnered with the FBI, the DEA, and the ATF. To this day, they have representation in our building 24/7. The FBI in particular has an agent and an analyst. The ATF has we partnered with them on a capability to collect gun information. They have a program called E-Trace, national program, where they solicit information on the recovery of crime guns, and then they trace that back to its original purchase. So it's voluntary. It was voluntary in New Jersey up until 2008 as well. But we partnered with them. We built a collection tool that was part of the already established process. Every police officer from Cape May to Sussex County, when they recover a crime gun, they run it in sieges for lost or stolen. We built a prompt into that already existing process to collect the information. We were able to then download it at the ROC every morning, and then batch upload it into the ATF's E-Trace system with ATF on premises. So essentially, after a couple of years, we were able to assure them of 100% compliance of every crime gun recovered in New Jersey going into the E-Trace system. So we have an incredible amount of information on where our guns are coming from. So we understand that over 80% of our guns are from legally purchased from out of state. The time to crime is about 12 and a half years from the purchase to its coming on scene in New Jersey. And for guns that are used in shootings, guns that are NIMAN, that we have that. It's about 6 years with some significant outliers, that we concentrate on. But what I would do is just, if you're asking me how to start something like this, just do it. Excel spreadsheets and making friends with your partners and your constituents. I'm looking out the window right now, and I'm looking at the Irish pub. I know every Irish bar in the state of New Jersey, and that's how that might be how we started really building relationships and friendships across the state. And it's only half a joke, believe me. But that we built trust and relationships, and then we built process so that that collection mechanism would outlast retirements and transfers and people moving on. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, it did, Joe. Thank you very much. Couple of things. First of all, I go back to the being proud of New Jersey. Even your response, Joe, on the just do it, it's fundamental to how most, I know that Jersey is characteristics of our relationships and moving forward and then ensuring success. But I do think that it still speaks to all of the component parts that we have said are so critical in order to formalize and replicate many of these different programs in other jurisdictions. It does take relationships, which is another term for governance. It does take know-how, which is another term for making sure that we have the operational requirements put in place. It does take data, which in turn is the technology that hopefully can facilitate it. It's not always required, because I can remember the early days of the CoreStat program, where Joe was amongst the team and leading the group that was slicing and dicing the data manually. And it certainly takes what is the collaboration and the policies that, in the case of some of these programs, it was the chicken and the egg. Let's have a successful program and then institute it and promulgate it throughout the state, or then let's support or urge the Attorney General or the Colonel of State Police to implement this policy so that the rest of the community follows and we're able to demonstrate the results. In the end, it goes back to the notion that if you're able to slice and dice data and impact and influence and make actionable the outcomes, so that in fact you have the reduction in crime and you can truly make your neighborhood safer, that is the be-all, end-all, and I know that all of us would support that notion. So to the panelists, Lieutenant Colonel Joseph Brennan, I appreciate your attendance. Sheila, thank you so much for making the time. We appreciate not only your personal contribution, but representing the organization that you have been president of for so long. And to Casey Roussel, our chair of the Analytics Committee, I thank you, and let's give them a round of applause.